Long ago, in the village of Umueka, there lived two men whose names carried weight wherever they went. One was Odegu, tall like an iroko tree, his muscles thick as yam tubers. The other was Okeke, lean but strong, his eyes sharp like a hunter's arrow. Both were great wrestlers, and their fame had spread beyond 7 villages. Women sang about them at the stream, children imitated their moves in the dust, and elders shook their heads, saying, "These two men, one day, will bring trouble to us." The trouble began during the New Yam festival. As drums beat and palm wine flowed, Odegu, with his chest bare and shining with oil, stood before the crowd and declared, "There is no man in this village who can match me. I am the strongest. I am the lion of Umueka." The people cheered, but Okeke stood up, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, and replied, "Lion indeed. What is a lion before the sharp claws of a leopard? Odegu, today you boast, but tomorrow we shall see who truly owns the land." The crowd gasped, and from that moment, the fight to finish was set in motion. From that day, Umueka was no longer one village but 2. Half the people stood behind Odegu, saying his strength was a gift from Amedioha, the god of thunder. The other half shouted Okeke's name, swearing that the spirits of hunters ran in his veins. Mothers quarreled at the stream, fathers argued in the palm wine tapper's hut, and even children divided themselves when playing games. It was as if a great knife had cut through the heart of the community. The elders, worried about the growing tension, gathered in the Obi, the meeting hut, under the old Udola tree. They sent for both men and begged them, "My sons, strength is nothing without wisdom. Must you destroy the peace of the village because of pride?" But Odegu's laughter thundered through the air. "If Okeke is not afraid, let us wrestle once and for all." Okeke only nodded, his lips tight, his eyes burning with fire. The fight was no longer about sport. It had become about honor, power, and who would be remembered in the songs of the future. As the day of the fight drew closer, strange things began to happen in Umueka. At night, villagers heard the cry of an owl perching on Odegu's roof. Old women whispered that it was a sign of death. Meanwhile, Okeke dreamt of a river that turned red with blood, and when he told his mother, she tied a red cloth around his wrist for protection. The air grew heavy, even the trees seemed to bend in silence, waiting. The village priest, Nana, warned the people. "This fight is not ordinary. The gods are watching. When men wrestle with pride, they wake spirits stronger than themselves." But the people were hungry for the spectacle. They ignored his warning and prepared for the contest with drums, horns, and songs. The ancestors stirred, the earth rumbled, and the fight to finish was now more than a battle between 2 men. It was a test of destiny. On the morning of the fight, the whole village gathered at the square, a wide clearing surrounded by palm trees. Women tied their wrappers high, men beat the drums until the ground shook, and children climbed trees to see better. The air smelled of roasted yam and palm oil, and the sun shone mercilessly, as if even the sky wanted to watch. Odegu entered first, his body oiled, beads around his neck, his chest rising like a blacksmith's bellows. The crowd roared, "Odegu! Odegu! Lion of Umueka!" Then Okeke walked in slowly, calm like a hunter stalking prey. His lean body was firm, his eyes sharp, and in his hand, he carried a small charm tied with red thread. The crowd shouted his name, "Okeke! Okeke! The leopard!" Drums fell silent. The time had come. At the sound of the talking drum, the 2 men charged at each other. Dust rose as their bodies collided like 2 rams on a hill. Odegu pushed forward with raw strength, but Okeke twisted like smoke, slipping from his grasp. The crowd shouted, as Okeke nearly brought Odegu to the ground, but the giants held firm, lifting Okeke off his feet and slamming him down with a thud that shook the earth. Okeke rose quickly, spitting dust, his eyes never leaving Odegu's face. "Is that all, lion?" he mocked, his voice steady. Odegu growled, charging again. This time, Okeke ducked low, wrapped his arms around Odegu's waist, and flipped him over with surprising force. The crowd screamed, half in joy, half in fear. The match had only begun, but it was already clear that this was no ordinary wrestling. The fight raged on, sweat pouring like rain, dust rising like harmattan fog. Odegu used his sheer power, trying to crush Okeke with brute force. Okeke, clever and swift, used tricks and speed, twisting away at the last moment, striking when least expected. The crowd shifted back and forth, cheering first one, then the other. But then something strange happened. Each time Odegu was about to win, his foot slipped on the earth as if an invisible hand pulled him down. Each time Okeke seemed cornered, a sudden breeze cooled him, giving him strength. The elders watching exchanged uneasy glances. This fight, they murmured, has left the hands of men. Spirits now wrestle with them. At last, Odegu struck with the strength of 10 men, hurling Okeke to the ground so hard that blood spilled from his mouth. The crowd gasped, some covering their eyes. "It is finished," they cried. But Okeke rose slowly, wiping the blood with the back of his hand. He looked at Odegu with a smile that chilled the crowd. "You may be strong, Odegu," he said, "but strength without wisdom is like a drum without sound." With that, he leapt with the agility of a leopard, wrapping his legs around Odegu's neck. The giant struggled, but Okeke squeezed tighter, until Odegu's face turned red. The crowd screamed in terror and excitement. Blood stained the earth, and the ancestors held their breath. Just as Odegu's strength began to fade, a sudden thunder cracked across the sky though the day was bright. The earth shook, the drums stopped, and everyone fell silent. The priest, Nana, rushed into the circle, shouting, "Enough! The gods have spoken." He lifted his staff, its cowries rattling. "This fight is cursed. If you continue, the whole village will pay with blood." But Odegu, choking yet proud, pushed the priest aside, roaring, "No god will stop me." Okeke's grip tightened, his eyes blazing with fury. The crowd began to panic, some running, others praying. The spirits had entered fully, and it was no longer two men fighting, but destiny itself tearing through the heart of Umueka. With one last burst of strength, Odegu tore free from Okeke's hold, but his body was weak. He staggered, his chest heaving like a tired bull. Okeke saw his chance and struck, throwing Odegu down with such force that the ground cracked beneath him. Odegu lay still, his eyes open but empty, his breath gone like smoke in the wind. The square fell silent. The lion of Umueka was no more. Women wailed, men beat their chests, and children cried in fear. Okeke stood tall, his chest rising, but there was no smile on his face. He looked at his fallen rival, and his heart grew heavy. For in winning, he had also lost the peace of the village, lost his innocence, and gained the cause of blood. From that day, Umueka was never the same. Though Okeke was hailed as the champion, the people no longer celebrated wrestling. The square that once rang with laughter became silent, for the blood of Odegu haunted the earth. At night, villagers swore they heard the sound of wrestling and the cry of a lion echoing through the wind. The elders gathered and spoke bitterly, "This is the price of pride. When two men fight to finish, it is not only their